Hi, my name is Ryan, and this month it's been 10 years of exclamation points. It's been a long and blessed journey. A lot has happened over the decade, and of course, a lot is happening now with the pandemic. I've spent the last week or two reflecting on scriptures and lessons that I've learned or experienced over the years. And while eating breakfast one early morning, a passage came to mind, a verse that is uniquely God. It's one of my favorite verses or concepts about God, His tremendous power, and His unbelievable nature. It shows God is awesome, and it explains who God is and reveals the divine dynamic. In Romans 4:17, Paul writes, "As it is written, I have made you a father of many nations. He is our Father in the sight of God, in whom He believed. The God who gives life to the dead and calls into being things that were not." In this chapter and verse, Paul is showing how Abraham was justified by faith and not by the law. The law does not make us righteous. It shows us our unrighteousness. Thankfully, Abraham's faith changed the course of humanity. Abraham's decision changed his path and put him on a journey to bless others. But it's the last part of Romans 4:17 that has always stood out to me. The God who gives life to the dead and calls into being things that were not. God calls into being things that were not. Wow, that is some really cool, powerful stuff. It's not there, and now it is. It didn't exist, and now it does. I don't see it, but now I do. God is not magic. He is almighty. He is the creator. He creates things out of nothing. I have seen this happen time and time again over the last 10 years. Hopeless situations, forlorn scenarios, and impossible outcomes are all God's specialty. He can make a way where there is no way. He can make things fall into place. He can move people and mountains. He can turn a bad day into a good day. He can defy logic. He can trump experience. He can rewrite precedent. He can turn defeat into victory. He can illuminate total darkness. He can restore relationships. He can reshape, remold, and transform anyone and anything. He can motivate you when you are ready to quit. He can resuscitate the brokenhearted. He can raise the dead. He can atone for your mistakes. He can love the unlovable. He can forgive the sinner. He can defy all odds. He can still make a miracle. He can do all things, and nothing is impossible with God. God is truly ineffable. Paul goes on to elaborate on Abraham's incredible faith in his God in Romans 4:18 through 22. He writes, "Against all hope, Abraham in hope believed, and so became the father of many nations, just as it had been said to him, so shall your offspring be." Without weakening in his faith, he faced the fact that his body was as good as dead, since he was about 100 years old, and that Sarah's womb was also dead. Yet he did not waver through unbelief regarding the promise of God, but was strengthened in his faith and gave glory to God, being fully persuaded that God had power to do what he had promised. This is why it was credited to him as righteousness. Against all hope, against everything that Abraham knew, contrary to what he could physically see, there was no chance that he could have a son with Sarah in their old age. It was a biological absurdity. They were so old that they were as good as dead. Yet he was fully persuaded that God would do what he promised. It was pure faith. And because of Abraham's tremendous faith, we ultimately have Jesus, and many generations have been blessed. The God of Abraham is still on the throne for us. No matter where you are or what you are going through during this pandemic, put your faith in God, trust in God, believe in Him, and be fully persuaded in His unlimited power. Think of Abraham and how there was no way for them to have a child unless God fulfilled His promise. Then remember, God still calls into being things that are not.